Hey everyone, welcome to another Midweek with Max. This is Rick, joined by Jeremy, Antonio, Marco, JCV, and of course our co-founder Max Sanchez. Without further ado, let me kick it right over to Max for our weekly updates.
All right, awesome. Welcome everyone to another Midweek with Max. As far as updates on the engineering side, nothing too new from last week. A lot of the same work streams, just progressing and getting closer to completion. So, still doing a lot of work on the opgeth to opereth uh, transition. So, we should be getting in PRs for doing internal testing with our local net setup this week, and then probably in the I'm guessing 3-ish week time span, getting nodes actually running in our infrastructure and serving some of the RPC requests. And then from there, assuming everything looks good and stable, then we'll slowly migrate more of our infrastructure over to it. We're also going to run a parallel testing track for people running external nodes. So we'll start with a beta that's not intended for use in production, but if anyone wants to go ahead and test the opereth version in their own infrastructure, see what it takes to run opereth, because some of the flags and configuration stuff is going to be slightly different. That'll give them a preview and a chance to do so. And then once we get opereth running in production in our infrastructure, then we'll do an official production release of opereth for people running nodes to upgrade to from opgeth. And then, excuse me, just a reminder, opgeth will be fully deprecated by or before the next major Ethereum protocol upgrade. And so anyone who's running a node will need to upgrade from the opgeth version to the latest production version of opereth prior to that Ethereum mainnet hard fork. So again, the Ethereum mainnet hard fork's not scheduled yet. But that's sort of the looming deadline for both our infrastructure being fully converted over, as well as any third-party infrastructure anyone else is running. And obviously, as we get closer to that, we'll provide more instructions, images. We'll update LocalNet to be able to run opereth first as an option, and then later as the default as we get closer to opgeth deprecation. So that's all moving along. Also, a minor note about that for anyone running a node. So the initial version of opereth is going to continue to use TBC through a RPC wrapper. And so that should allow everyone to reuse their existing synced TBC data directories for all the indexed Bitcoin data. And then a later upgrade will force the conversion over from TBC to Oxygen to get all the ZK features that we need for enabling ZK proving of the network. And at that point, that's when people would need to do a database upgrade slash full resync with the Oxygen index data, which is in a different tree structure format that allows us to do cool ZK related stuff with it. So initially the upgrade will be swapping out opgeth for opereth, but TBC is going to be still used under the hood through an RPC adapter. And then longer term, that's going to get replaced with Oxygen, which will require a database reindex for all of the embedded Bitcoin nodes data that's available to HVM precompiles and then also used for the Bitcoin attributes deposited transactions. So that's sort of the upgrade path there. Let's see, beyond that, still doing a lot of work on we're now calling it MinerFi. We are still working on a marketing term for that. That's more about the total, easy onboarding and offboarding Bitcoin into Hemi and automatically composing it into DeFi chutes and ladders. So that's going to plug into what we talked about before, which is Hemi Earn, which is our native Bitcoin staking system that we're building out, and also be able to do other cool stuff with the Bitcoin automatically. So that system's still moving along. We're getting some final PRs for Continuum, which is the daemon that actually manages participation in the threshold signature scheme and doing some final rounds of optimization on the ZK proving side, trying to get that a little bit more efficient to lower the hardware requirements for people who do want to participate in the TSS system and run a node and stake their VE Hemi positions to earn deposit withdrawal fees from the fast bridge component of the MinerFi system. Again, you'll see that be renamed to something else that kind of encompasses the whole flow of Bitcoin in and out of the system, not just being a bridge, because it's a bridge and also a DeFi composability piece. So as soon as we have the actual branding for that, we'll start using that. But for now, we're still referring to it as the MinerFi system. Of note on both of those items, we are going to be doing an engineering AMA tomorrow morning at, make sure I get the time right, 9 a.m. Eastern, which is basically 2 hours before midweek usually is. So right now it's 11 a.m. Eastern. We're going to be going over a little bit of the opgeth to opereth transition and some of the rest bits we're working on, probably touching on oxygen a bit, and then focusing probably most of the time on the MinerFi system and some of the cool stuff we're doing on the threshold signature scheme side. That's interesting and novel, and we'll also talk about some of the end user effects of that with the, use cases from a user coming to the network wanting to do Bitcoin stuff in DeFi on Hemi, wants to use this new system, what that's going to look like on their side. So looking forward to that AMA if you want to join us for that. Again, that's 9 a.m. Eastern tomorrow, and I'll throw it over to, once I finish updates, Rick to give if there's any other details on that. I believe it's going to be available on, like most of our live streams, Twitter/X, YouTube, and LinkedIn, again, for some reason. So definitely catch us there for that AMA. Let's see, beyond that, general ZK provability work on the network, still making progress there. A lot of the work on that side is also work just in general getting opereth to replace opgeth. And so a lot of that work that we're doing there doubles over and lets us do ZK provability things on the execution engine side. So nothing too interesting to update on that side other than just a lot of the opereth stuff landing is going to unlock a lot of the next stage of ZK proving beyond the ZK proving system for Bitcoin, a la Oxygen that we've already built and are in the process of testing. And let's see, beyond that, I think those are all of the major engineering items. We are also working on that ZK proving marketplace that people have heard me talk about, and we've done an AMA on that as well as one of the live streams. So that's moving along, and we should be doing some public beta testing of that at some point in the relatively near future. I'd say probably next 3 to 4 weeks, something in that time scale. So look forward to that, and that's going to be available on the beta testers channel first. So if you want to be one of the first people to play around with that and get some incentives for testing it out and giving feedback, definitely make sure you're in the beta testers channel. And also on the VE Hemi side, we've sent out, I think I already gave this update last week, but just for completeness, we sent out an update to the VE Hemi system for auditing that's going to enable more granular position tracking for incentives and also make it compatible with some of the major third-party governance platforms. And we're working with one of those governance platforms. As soon as we finalize everything, we'll announce the name of it, working with them to get them onboarded onto Hemi, both for us to use as VE Hemi governance and also for anyone else who wants to spin up a governance system on Hemi, you'll now be able to use this third-party service. And so that's coming in the relatively near future as well. The contract audits will probably take a few weeks, and then we'll get that upgrade pushed to mainnet once that audit finishes. I think that's pretty much everything. And then we're also working on the VE Hemi restaking system. So that's going to be another upgrade to the VE Hemi contracts. And that's going to be used. The first consumer that's going to be MinerFi. So people restaking VE Hemi positions to act as operators of the system, running continuum daemons that manage the threshold signature scheme system that's used by the MinerFi, the fast bridge component of the MinerFi protocol. And then that's going to expand out as we decentralize more features. So as we get to, in no particular order, HBIT VM, decentralized sequencing, decentralized DA and state root publication, and then eventually the chain builder components for shared sequencing, shared DA, and some other smaller pieces of the protocol. Those are all going to flow through that VE Hemi converged staking or VE Hemi restaking system. So those contract updates are also in the works. Those will be a follow-on upgrade after we do this smaller upgrade for governance support. And I think that's all the major stuff on the engineering side. to go through the usual VBK stuff. I do not have any updates to share, but it is still coming, so stay tuned. As soon as I have more information, I'll definitely share it. But it is still in the pipeline. And then pop payouts, we are going to be getting that deployed shortly. We are doing a rebase with some of the recent opgeth changes to merge in some of the stuff needed for the updated pop payouts algorithms. We're going to be getting that deployed to testnet shortly, just to make sure, out of an abundance of caution, that everything's good, and then we'll get that deployed to mainnet once we finish that rebase and node upgrade. And I think that's pretty much everything for my updates. So I'll throw it back over to Rick if there's anything he wanted to add about the engineering AMA tomorrow, and then we can get to questions.
I don't have any further updates regarding the engineering AMA, except everyone should attend it. And that format is going to be the new home of Midweek with Max starting in May. So next week is actually going to be our last Midweek with Max on Discord for the foreseeable future, as we will be switching over to the new platform where you can watch us on YouTube, X, and if you hit your head in the shower, LinkedIn.
So we got to make it a big one next week, right? Go fucking crazy.
Yeah, we'll swear, we'll drink, we will. I mean, that's not a terrible idea, actually.
It's 11 in the morning.
We'll go out with a bang. You're my boss. As long as you say it's okay, it's cool. Um, but, um, yeah, no, we'll have a proper send off. But yeah, Midweek and Max not going anywhere. But we are switching platforms, and next week we will have a abundance of updates about the community to share with the community. Yeah, brace yourselves for that one. Before we get into questions, Jeremy, anything from marketing you would like to share?
Well, with the abundance of caution in the ecosystem right now, I'd like to direct everyone to check out the latest iteration of our Hemi test series, talking about Hemi Trap, a version of the network that we snapshot and fork in order to direct any type of testing and see how smart contracts integrate and make sure there aren't any errors, anything like that in live production. So we do take testing and building Hemi very seriously, and that's why every step in its architecture takes into account every possible attack vector that we can engineer for. And, invite everyone to read that also. We'll be enjoying the week after this one, a visit from our friends over at Lagoon Finance. Join us for a special stream there. Announcements and times for that are forthcoming very soon. And otherwise, nothing major to report to you guys on the marketing front, but I'm always trying to cook something up, so keep your eyes peeled.
Right, rock and roll, Buckaroo. All right, let's get into some rapid fire updates. Max, you already covered um, VBK and the pop payout algorithm. There are a couple others here in the update section. When HBUSD?
I don't have a specific update on that. I want to say, don't quote me on this, that HBUSD is the actual contracts are deployed and usable, but there's not a front end deployed for it. Just as a reminder, HBUSD was it's an economic experiment for a one-way burn of Hemi tokens to create HBUSD at the current Oracle price of the Hemi token at the time of mintage. So it's not a major component of the Hemi network or something that we're planning on doing a lot of stuff around. It's more of a interesting economic experiment. We may use it as a more creative way to do certain types of Hemi token burns as part of reward distributions, fee collection, possibly at some point a component in some of the VE Hemi burns on slashing or something like that, to, instead of doing just a pure slash, create a token that's representative of sort of frozen value at a point in time. But it's limited in utility and it's more of an economic experiment. So no exact updates. I think the contracts are deployed, but I don't think we're doing anything significant with it. At some point, there will probably be a UI for it for people to use, but again, it is really just a fun economic experiment, a interesting take on token burning that could have some interesting effects and maybe create a secondary token that's useful for some sort of kind of fund side trading as a limited supply, but not economically redeemable back to Hemi tokens, representative tokens. So again, nothing too interesting on that. It's not a priority on our side, but it is a interesting economic experiment. There may be some fun stuff we can do around token burning with it in the future.
All right, I got two more of these for you on the docket. Any information regarding the Plotus debrief?
Nothing else to share on that at the moment. We are still working on it, so we should have it out shortly. Some other stuff's taken priority, especially with the ref conversion. That's taken a lot of engineering time, but we do want to get that out in the near future. So stay tuned. We are still compiling it and making it readable and digestible for anyone who does want to use it, either to understand just what happened or if they want to file anything with law enforcement or anything like that. It gives them additional data and resources and on-chain references and stuff to track for that. Again, like I mentioned previous weeks, there's no smoking gun of a actually identifiable person or legal entity to really go after, as is the case with a lot of DeFi investigations. So it has a lot of useful data of what happened, what the flow of funds during the exfiltration process looked like, where they went, how they moved across various networks, and kind of clustering addresses that are related to the attack, whether they be assisting in doing initial, seeding of liquidity on the protocol. That was pretty clearly, although not 100% identifiably, linked to the attacker themselves or the downstream, route of funds, again, through the exfiltration path. So useful stuff in there. We do want to get that published, but again, like I've said in previous weeks, there's no smoking gun of like an individual or legal entity that we can actually identify, which again, that's DeFi, and they use pretty good technical measures to hide their tracks. Nothing out of the ordinary that we haven't seen in other DeFi exploits before, but it's well orchestrated, so there's not really a again that smoking gun for an actual entity to go after. But we do want to get that published soon.
All right, and you knew this was coming. When OG roll?
I don't unfortunately have any additional updates to share on that. It is still something that's being actively worked on. There's some technical components that need to be finished up before that can land. So it's taken a backseat to all of the opereth conversion stuff because that's time sensitive with the upstream deprecation, and we need to get that out. So hopefully we'll have a better update with timing to share in the near future, but I do not have any better information to share at the moment. But it is still a priority, and we do still want to get that out.
All right. Um, this is a very general question. Konang asks, when NFT?
I guess for a very general question, the answer would be now. There are definitely NFTs. That actually does. Can we talk about the NFT community thing?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. So Alpha's been working on a NFT marketplace, and I think Alex has been helping with a lot of the testing and possibly some of the development as well. And there may be more community members involved in that as well. But that's we talked with Alpha last week. He gave a demo of the platform he's working on, and it looks cool. It looks a lot better than even a lot of the larger platforms' user interfaces. So it's a pretty low bar in crypto, but still it's a cool interface. But we're in the process of reviewing, looking at the smart contracts on our side, and in the relatively near future, not sure his timeline or go to market, strategy at the moment. That's probably something we'll discuss with him, and we also got to figure out some things on our side for community incentives around it. But there is a community-led grassroots Hemi native NFT marketplace that's being worked on, and that we're partnering with / helping with, however you want to phrase that, but that we're involved in with to some extent with reviewing and doing some sanity checks on the security side for the smart contracts, and also figuring out some community incentives around. So I don't want to share alpha's update for him, but there's some cool stuff going on that side with the NFT marketplace.
It is finally happening, amigos. And it was a Hamigo who created it. So well done. And that
And
is a
it's also a
perfect time.
reminder. Oh yeah, go for it. Build a roll.
No, I was just saying that's that's a perfect time to plug the builder roll. It's in my notes. Josh, if you wouldn't mind posting the builder roll. Here it comes. Yes, if you would like to get the builder roll, let's just say that there will be more robust updates about it next week. But the builder roll is going to become a staple of the Hemi community. So if you're interested in building on the Hemi chain, click that apply button and get that builder roll.
And if like alpha, you want to build, there's some specific project that you're interested in building on Hemi, definitely reach out. We'd love to chat through. We're still working on getting the full kind of self-serve official developer bounty grants program up and running. But in the meantime, if there's something you're interested in building, definitely reach out. We'd love to hear from you. If there's anything, technical questions about Hemi, specifically like how HVM precompiles work, things like that that are Hemi specific, happy to answer those. And also, depending on the type of project and whether it's on-chain DApp or whether it's a external data visibility dashboard or whatever it is, where it makes sense, we're happy to also discuss helping out with community incentives for launching whatever it is you're building, getting organic community growth around it with some token incentives and anything else that potentially makes sense. So definitely, if there's something you're interested in building, A, grab the builder roll, hang out in builders channel. But B, if there's a specific thing that you're building that you want to launch on Hemi, we'd love to hear from you. And just like we're discussing the NFT marketplace that Alpha's building, we'd love to chat with you about what you're building and see where we can help.
JCV, did you want to add anything to that? I know you are very passionate about the builder role.
I think that mostly covers it, where we've got, like you said, we're hoping we're going to be doing things very soon to make this a more like serious and real part of the community. So if you want to, no time like the present to start. And remember, we're not here to tell you what you should be building. You're here to tell us what you want built. And then, we want to help you do that.
The beautiful thing about a permissionless network is that anyone can build anything. Like if you look around, all the stuff that's here in crypto, someone just decided to pick it up and build it, and that's what we want you to do on Hemi.
It's hard to say, don't even worry about if you want to build something, worry about what you want to build first, worry about whether, other than security, worry about if things are secure. But other than that, whether or not it's a good idea or not, is sort of secondary. Start building, then you can see, worry about that front. Except on security. Security first all the damn time, but otherwise.
Yes, first security, but don't worry if it's necessarily a good idea. Just remember, they made 12 of those stupid Air Bud movies, and none of them were a good idea.
They made
And there's
12 of
12.
those?
There's 12.
So that's more than because I thought the like 10 or 11 Hellraiser movies that I watched was stretching it a bit.
No, I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure there's at least a dozen Air Bud movies because he plays basketball, baseball, tennis. I'm pretty sure he plays football at one point.
He needs to, get into crypto in one. Someone get on that script now.
I don't know if that would follow the sports theme though. He just gives up sports and starts day trading?
I'm just saying, a dog doing things that he really shouldn't do. What the hell, right?
Yeah, Airbud learns how to use perps.
I'm still working on isn't that's as many as Land Before Time movies?
There's 12 of those.
I think there's more than 12. I want to say there's more than 12. But yeah, if anyone wants to make the 13th Air Bud movie where he gets into crypto, and let's be honest, if he gets into ZK provability, you've already sold one ticket.
Maybe he loses all his money in crypto and then he has to come out of retirement to go back to one of his sports.
Oh, that's not a bad idea. Yeah.
Okay, look, I'm writing the script for this. You guys get me all the pointers.
He loses his shirt in an altcoin and has to return to sports. I digress. Let's get back to the show.
Talk to you about again.
I'm sorry about the earbud comparison. I was trying to say that, even bad ideas turn into things.
When Air
And-
Bud drop.
Oh, God damn it, Jeremy. Just God damn it. All right, I'm moving on. Someone mute him, please. Okay, where are we? Before I ask this question, there's a question for Antonio. This one comes in from Daniel. When the hell are we gonna play Baldur's Gate 3 again?
That's a question for me. I'm not the one holding up this campaign, man.
That's fair.
I'm just waiting.
Okay.
So whenever you guys want.
Perfect. Well, that brings us to an actual community question. When will there be a live game night session with the Hemi team?
I don't know. That's that would be a fun event to schedule. Maybe we could do. I don't know. I'm not really into gaming. I don't know what's hot nowadays.
I mean,
XCOM 2. Isn't that the only game that exists?
we could play GTA 5.
People still play that. Isn't that like 12 years old?
It is, but GTA 5 Online or GTA Online is still ridiculously fun, and they still pump out updates for it.
How would we manage the multiple screens streaming simultaneously?
I don't know. I mean, we can barely get we can't even get Discord to stream to YouTube. So
Yeah, that's
There's
true.
Coming
some
to
logistics
Twitch,
to figure
the
out
Hemi
there.
team.
We'd have to do it on Twitch. We'll figure this
fun.
out. We'll figure
is
this
fun.
out, and yes, this is something that we will do within the next couple months. We'll do some sort of a Hemi game night.
We could do
Just
a
not
tabletop
that-
game too. Like if anyone wanted to do something like, accessible to the imagination.
So Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
I'd play D&D with the Hemi community. I know Daniel would
would.
as well. Daniel's actually working on a campaign. Okay. We are going in radical tangents today, and quite frankly, I blame myself in a good way. Okay, let's get back to business. Oh, thank God. Oh, what the hell is this? Hold on. Alex asks, my son's football club is looking for a sponsor who's buying some football shirts for the team. Is Hemi available to buy and deliver it to them? That could be fun to have the Hemi logo on their shirts.
It'll be fun. A lot of kids running around with kid-sized Hemi shirts.
So I guess the question is, do we want to sponsor a youth football team?
I don't think that's something that we could do, but we might be able to do something with like existing stuff from the merch store, like sending that out. Possibly, we'll have to chat internally, but it's a cool idea.
We could do that. Yeah. We probably couldn't like sponsor the team, but like if there's something in the merch store, we could send out a little package.
Or something other than coffee mugs. You don't want to promote
Right.
caffeine addiction to like 10-year-olds.
Yeah, we probably don't want to spread that.
You have to wait till you're like 14, 13 maybe.
Enough before you can drive, so that you're alert when you're learning to drive. I think that's a fair timeline.
All right. What else we got here? Where are these questions coming from today? Okay. Alpha asks, will Hemi create a STEMI coin? Jeez, I can't even talk now. It's all because of the Airbud chat. Alpha asks, will Hemi create a stable coin for CHY, which I believe is Chinese yen?
There's not currently a plan for this, but we do have some really cool stuff in the Hemi project sphere / partner projects related to stablecoins. So trying to think, I can't announce too much about that yet. We should have a public announcement coming out about that project in hopefully the next few weeks. We'll see on the timeline. But the architecture for that system is generic, and there's actually some cool stuff we're planning on doing with like non-fiats entirely. So quote unquote stable coins based around like other crypto assets that acts as sort of this I think we've talked about this idea way back in the past. We called it I'm not sure if we ever used this word publicly, but at least internally we called it like meta BTC, meta ETH, the idea that you could take multiple different versions of a certain type of asset and sort of bundle them together in a layer that abstracts away the complexity of onboarding. So you can come in from basically any angle, whether that be, take Bitcoin as an example, you could come in through Hemi BTC, WBTC, TBTC, et cetera, et cetera. And it acts as sort of this homogenization layer on top of multiple different underlying representations of the same crypto asset. And so that architecture could potentially be used to do some cool stuff for other non-USDC stablecoins, or non-USD stablecoins, but it's not currently in the works. So, good question. Stay tuned for that stablecoin project announcement, and then that architecture could theoretically do this, but it's not one of the currently planned items.
When will ordinals be supported on Hemi HVM?
This is a very timely question. I think Marco may have some thoughts to share on this as well. So super high level, ordinal support directly in the HVM as a additional indexer is not one of the top priority items, but it is still on the backlog of engineering items that we do want to complete and get pushed out as feature upgrades. So that is something we do want to support, but there's, I'd say, to some extent, waning demand on the ordinal side. But there is some cool stuff that you can do with ordinals if you have index data available in HVM that you can't do with ordinals anywhere else. And so adding that support could be a way to reignite some interest in ordinals as well and give people new cool stuff to do with them. So I'd say there's not a exact date on the timeline. It's a lower priority item behind HBit VM, all the MinerFi stuff, and sequencer decentralization, but it is something that we do want to get added. And I'll throw it over to Marco if he wants to talk to any other details or some of the stuff that he's thinking about on that side.
Sure. So, for reasons unknown, I have actually put up 3 PRs that will add the basic support for ordinals. I have one that I have not put up yet that actually does the inscribing and broadcasting and all the kind of good stuff. So I've actually written all the code for TBC for ordinals to actually function and therefore to exist as first-class citizens. So, in the thing that I actually been farting around in my spare time is actually using MetaMask with Bitcoin and basically then minting to a Bitcoin address, even though it's controlled by MetaMask. So if I can get that to work, and I think I can, we'll be able to move Bitcoin ordinals using MetaMask. So, and I thought that was a fun way of using Hemi magic to do Bitcoin things with, essentially with Ethereum-based tools. So, but if you guys follow my PRs along, you'll probably will see some of this stuff pop up over the next couple of weeks.
And there's also some cool stuff you could do with ordinals even without native HVM support. So native, HVM indexing of ordinal data and exposing that through new precompiles will give you, it kind of like with all of the Bitcoin data currently available, it gives you a lot more flexibility and makes it a lot easier to build and design DeFi applications around, with the current HVM precompiles with Bitcoin itself, and then with precompiles for one of the meta protocols like ordinals or BRC20s or runes. It makes that a lot easier. But there is stuff you could do with ordinals today. So you do have all of the data available on chain that you could look at and parse through a transaction and see, depending on the meta protocol that you're interested in, what effects that Bitcoin transaction had on the sort of pseudo or virtual state machine on top of Bitcoin that meta protocol creates as sort of a lensed view of Bitcoin. So it would require a lot more work and it's a little more limited, but there is stuff you could do with meta protocols today if you wanted to. But we do want to add full support to the HVM to make that easier. And some of the stuff Marco's working on obviously ties into that. And then one of the other things on that Marco's thinking about and we've put some thought into way back in the early days of the HVM protocol design was adding a broadcast feature. So basically being able to construct a Bitcoin transaction through handwave, however you want to do it. There's potentially even some cool ways that we could reuse some of the stuff we're working on for MinerFi with the threshold signature scheme to provide some sort of decentralized signing infrastructure that could be leveraged by certain types of dApps. But that aside, basically, if somehow you're able to get a valid Bitcoin transaction built and the data available in the EVM, being able to send that to a precompile that basically uses Hemi's infrastructure and the existing peer-to-peer connections of currently TBCD nodes and the future embedded Oxygen nodes to the Bitcoin network, and use that as sort of a I don't want to call it a back channel, but a way to broadcast data that's available in the EVM environment on Hemi all the way out to the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network. So
I actually may have deployed a contract for that.
I have not had a chance to look at it yet, but I'm very excited as we were chatting about this over the weekend. So
Yeah, so I actually deployed a contract just to play with this a little bit, and I've not quite figured it all out yet, but I do think that I can make this work with Continuum. So in other words, you could then have a consortium of people that are required to sign off on sending out a Bitcoin transaction. So and this opens up all kinds of interesting things. Now you can have an incentive market built on top of that board. So anyway, but I have some fun stuff to share with you guys here over the next couple of weeks. Max got a little preview.
and also building on top of that, Marco mentioned potentially reusing Continuum as part of a sort of on-chain transaction signing coordination layer. And so we can get into this in more details on the AMA, which is conveniently timed for tomorrow, very relevant to this conversation. But what Continuum currently does is it's basically a threshold. It's a daemon that people can run that participates in a threshold signature scheme. So for anyone, most people in crypto have, I'm sure, heard of multi-sig, the idea that you have, this transaction can't be executed unless 2 of 3 of these participants sign off on it. 2 of 3 can be 5 of 7, 7 of 7, whatever. And so threshold signature schemes basically allows you to do that, but instead of doing it the sort of obvious way, which is, like legacy Bitcoin, multi-sig, or what we have on-chain with things like formerly Gnosis, but now just called Safe, which is the most confusing brand in the world. But what those do is they actually, count the number of signatures from individual participants, and then add that up and then compare it to a program threshold. Whereas with threshold signature schemes, you get the same general use case of n of m participants having to sign a message for it to be valid. We're doing it at the cryptography layer, and so all that's seen on chain is one single signature that is basically an aggregate. It depends on the exact scheme, but you can think of it as an aggregated signature or a signature that's composed of multiple parts that come from individual participants. And again, depending on what exact threshold signature scheme you're using, but it basically lets you do multi-sig, but natively at the cryptography level. And so there's some efficiency benefits to that, obviously, where you're only validating one signature on chain. There's, for certain applications, privacy, because you're not actually revealing what that group is. It doesn't relate to MinerFi because for the MinerFi system, all of the participants' identities and participation in the protocol is public and auditable on chain. But there's privacy use cases for certain privacy implications for certain use cases that are interesting that you can't do a standard multi-sig. And you also get, which is, again, not all resharing schemes can necessarily do this, but generally speaking, or not all threshold signature schemes can do this, but generally speaking, you can do key resharing, which is a way where you can actually rotate the set of participants in the threshold signature scheme system. So you can dynamically change the n of m numbers, and also you can rotate participants in and out of the system. And so you can use that for long-term continuity of access and security over keys with a evolving group of participants. So Continuum basically is a daemon that coordinates participation in a threshold signature scheme and signing of Bitcoin transactions using that essentially shared private key. And we're currently using it for the MinerFi system that we're building. but there's potentially a lot of other cool ways that could be reused. Again, like Marco was alluding to create incentivized on-chain, more generic signing infrastructure. So you could have, a staked pool of people who operate continuum daemons, and then you could have a protocol that lets you register a Bitcoin address, in air quotes, but register a Bitcoin address basically with that threshold signature scheme, and it allows you to execute arbitrary Bitcoin transactions that are signed by that collateralized threshold signature group. So there's some cool stuff, obviously, for Bitcoin itself and sort of on-chain composable connective tissue between what's executing in an EVM smart contract and then actually executing a Bitcoin transaction at the end result of that does something that's been determined by the on-chain contract execution. But getting more specific, there's some cool stuff potentially with ordinals you could do with that. There's also potentially interesting things that you could do for like data publication. Use cases for that may be a little more limited and niche, but it's a cool, at least from a technical perspective, interesting to be able to arbitrarily publish data directly to Bitcoin. So you already get that by proxy with proof of proof because top miners are publishing state roots of Hemi, which are cryptographic fingerprints against which any data on Hemi and in the future any chain builder chains that are popped through Hemi for inheriting Bitcoin security, that state root acts as a cryptographic fingerprint that you can authenticate any of that data against. But there could be some cool use cases for publishing arbitrary data directly to Bitcoin for certain applications, maybe for direct on Bitcoin auditing of a specific protocol state or important actions taken in governance or things of that nature. And one of those use cases is minting something like ordinals or BRC20s or runes that is, again, hand waving a little bit, but essentially just publishing arbitrary data to Bitcoin. And so that sort of system would actually allow a contract on Hemi to execute, send arbitrary data, which contains basically the correct data to publish to Bitcoin to perform the meta protocol minting of a certain token and deliver that to an address. And that could all be done triggered on-chain through a contract running on Hemi and then executed on Bitcoin by some sort of threshold signature scheme that could be using a maybe adapted variant of Continuum that works in this more generic way instead of just the MinerFi specific application of it. So a lot of potential cool stuff there. I don't want to spend too much time, I say, as I've probably rambled for 10 minutes on that. Since we do have the AMA on that tomorrow, we can dive more into details then. But definitely some cool ways to reuse some of the MinerFi stuff we're building for more generic Bitcoin programmability infrastructure, and that also, getting back to the original question, touches meta protocols, including ordinals, BRC20s, and runes. So some cool future stuff there that could be coming to Hemi, and if that's something that you want to use as part of a DeFi protocol you're building or anything like that, definitely stay tuned. And if there's any specific input of what features you want to see to build some cool meta protocols related DeFi application, definitely let us know so we can keep that in mind as we're building out some of the stuff.
Right. I have a couple very timely questions that I assume kind of pertain to equal parts security, but also some of the events that happened this weekend in our space. Not directly affecting us, of course, but affecting others in the space. So, Crypto Boy asks, is it possible for what happened on Arbitrum, forcefully sending funds from an attacker's address to another address without the attacker's approval, to happen on Hemi? This is assuming it is the morally right thing to do and law enforcement demands it.
No, or no.
Yeah, theoretically, in some limited instances, technically, yes, by forcing like a protocol upgrade or something similar, but in general, as Marco said, no.
All right.
And that no will continue to become a no with multiple exclamation marks as we decentralize parts of the protocol, like decentralized sequencing and state root publication with ZK proofs. So,
Right. I will do my very best to make that answer always be no. So I find it very unfortunate that people lose their shirt, but that cannot be the protocols and decentralization's fault. That is your own fault for doing it wrong. And unfortunately, that sometimes burns some people, but that is a fact of life.
Yeah, decentralization has there are risks to being decentralized, but at the same time there are risks to being not decentralized. So, the big part of the point of crypto was that we believe that the risks of the definite risks of being centralized are worse than the risks of being decentralized. And yes, we obviously on the sort of various front end and usability, all of the porcelain side, the whole industry should be doing better to like mitigate risks. And we need to all have some long and hard talks about hardware wallets and not doing dangerous shit. But that doesn't mean that the solution is to break decentralization.
Yeah, if you want all these options that you just mentioned, you should have a bank account. And Bitcoin is not your world if you want those types of features.
All right. I have a related question. How is Hemi secured to prevent attacks such as the Kelp DAO one, especially against VE Hemi restaking?
So I'm not sure where the VE Hemi part of the question comes in. So take it from the top. So ignoring VE Hemi for a second, then we'll circle back to that and I'll explain the VE Hemi architecture in a bit. Basically, for anyone not familiar, what happened was Kelp DAO they had their cross-chain OFT contract configured to use one-of-one DVNs or decentralized. I always forget whether it's validator or verifier, but decentralized validator nodes, DVNs, which meant that if that one single DVN, which was the layer 0 DVN, was compromised in some way, then somebody could forge cross-chain messages. And so I think, gosh, probably like 2 months ago, we had a conversation of what does it really mean for tokens to be bridged, and kind of revisiting that conversation. Basically, if you have a token on, say, Ethereum, for example, and you want to bridge it to an L2, you can go through the canonical bridge, or in Hemi's case, the canonical tunnel. But there's also other systems that are faster and potentially not as secure, but they're faster, they're cheaper to use, and in many instances, they're required because, moving, say, from, just to throw out a random example, base to Solana or something, there's no canonical, low-level protocol level bridging functionality. And so a lot of the ecosystem built up around these protocols like Layer 0 that provide this more generic cross-chain portability of messages. So Layer 0, fundamentally, people think of it as a bridging mechanism, but really at a tech level, it is a messaging protocol. And so it's a way for a contract on one chain to send a message to a contract on another chain, and for that to ideally be delivered quickly and securely, meaning that if it's delivered to the remote chain, then it does actually exist on the source chain, and it's not going to get deleted from the source chain through, say, a blockchain reorg or something like that. And so on top of the messaging protocol, you can build bridging protocols, which, the classic pattern is lock and mint. And then the idea basically is you put the token into an adapter contract, and then that adapter contract sends messages to its remote peers on other chains saying, hey, we got, 2 of token XYZ locked in the locker, and it's supposed to go to this address on remote chain Y. And then it sends that message to remote chain Y. Remote chain Y sees that and then mints a representative token representing those 2 token X's, and then sends those to the participant who should receive them. And then later, when somebody wants to redeem that representative version of that token back to the native token on, say, Ethereum, where the OFT adapter is deployed, then they go reverse the process. So they burn the tokens on the remote chain. That lets the remote OFT contract send a message to the OFT adapter and release those underlying 2 X tokens to the person who's successfully minted the representative remote tokens. And so what happened with Kelp DAO is they have their primary RS ETH token deployed on Ethereum, and then they have a layer 0 bridging system set up that allows that token, that RSE, to be locked, and then for a cross-chain message to be delivered to one of the peer contracts and one of the supported L2s to mint the representative RSE token, and then unwind that, and again, like I mentioned before, eventually burn that token remotely and send it back. And so what happened with the exploit was, since they were using a single DVN, well, going back a second to the architecture, so the way those messages are secured is they're signed by a group of DVNs, and that group could be one of one. In the case of KelpDAO, it could be 2 of 3, or 1 required and 2 of 3 optional. There's different ways to configure it, which we'll get into. But basically, however the protocol's configured, you need those specific DVNs to observe that the contract on one chain actually did correctly send a certain message before they go and sign off on the delivery of that message to the remote chain. And so when you have a 1 of 1 DVN configuration, what that means is if the DVN was compromised, then that DVN could sign messages that did not really correctly originate from the contract that the message is claiming to originate from. And so what that means for a bridging architecture specifically is that if you have, a bunch of the token, the representative version of the token minted on an L2 through one of these adapter contracts, and then the DVN, forges or signs an invalid message that incorrectly claims a number of those have been burnt on the remote side, then they can incorrectly unlock the underlying token from the adapter contract on the L1, or mesh tokens. They can mint a version that they can mint a number of those tokens on one of the chains without them being appropriately burned on the source chain, like the message claims. And so basically it enables you to mint tokens out of thin air. And whether you're using a mesh system or a OFT adapter with like a token locker setup, changes what exactly the attack can do, whether it can inflate the native token supply or just inflate the incorrectly, just mint the representative version and then potentially redeem that for the underlying without changing the underlying's true supply, which is what actually happened with the KelpDAO attack. As far as how you prevent against that, the industry standard is to use multiple DVNs for any sort of layer 0 messaging. And so everything that we do in the Hemi ecosystem with all of our tokens and all the major other tokens that third parties provide on the Hemi network, they're all configured with multi-DVN setups. And so that sort of compromise could not be used, compromising a single DVN could not be used to forge messages, because no message is considered valid and executed by the smart contract unless it's signed by the specified threshold of DVNs. So short answer is they got bit because they're using a single DVN. For why that actual failure, why that DVN, in this case layer 0, actually signed an invalid message based on postmortem from them, RPC nodes that they were relying on for data were compromised. And so basically the DVN was operating normally, but it was reading bad data about messages initiated from Unichain from compromised RPC endpoints. And then there's also supposedly a denial of service attack against one of the other third-party sanity check RPC endpoints that the DVN was relying on for Unichain data. And so that allowed the attacker to basically serve bad data over, the equivalent of an opgeth RPC to the DVN, which caused the DVN to sign invalid messages, which then allowed the attacker, by carefully crafting those messages, to basically forge a message that made it look like RSE, in this case, should be unlocked on the Ethereum base layer when it really shouldn't have, because it wasn't actually correctly existing and burned on the remote chain. So that's how the attack happened. How you prevent against it is multiple DVNs. Everything that Hemi does with layer 0 uses multiple DVNs. So that's the Hemi token itself, Hemi BTC. Also, these aren't ones that we control the deployment of, but USDC, USDT, those are all also the cross-chain ETH, although that goes through liquidity pool, but all of that's configured with multiple DVN setups. And so that's the best way to protect against it. The ideal case is we get to a world where everything's powered by ZK. Yes, Rick, I found a way to get to ZK again this week.
I was waiting. I was waiting, and I'm surprised that it didn't come up sooner. If I had the applause button, which I will after next week, you would have gotten it right there.
That is the main reason we're moving over to the streaming platforms, is to get Rick's soundboard.
That's absolutely
Um,
true.
But so the DVNs are kind of a stand-in for DVNs. Essentially act as oracles. It's a little different than the usual oracles people think about, which is publishing on-chain data, or like signing data to be then relayed by a user or consumer of that data on-chain. But they effectively act as oracles, where they're observing the state of chains and attesting to what they see. And so you have, for example, a 2 of 3 DVN configuration. You'll have DVNs A, B, and C. They're all observing different nodes that either they're running, and or a mix of nodes that they're running, or third-party RPC endpoints they depend on. And they're, if they see that a layer 0 message was sent by a specific contract on the chain, chain X that they're observing, that's going to chain Y, then they will sign off on that message, and then the contract that uses layer 0 on chain Y will then validate, because it's been configured with that 2 of 3 DVN configuration. It'll validate that that cross-chain message was signed by 2 of those 3 approved DVNs for that route before executing anything based on that message's delivery. And so you're essentially relying on that group of DVNs that you choose to be honest, and for that threshold you set to be high enough that that number of DVNs could not be simultaneously compromised by an attacker, like what happened with the layer 0 DVN. And so the better solution that I hope the entire industry, and obviously something that we're working towards at Hemi, will get to, is using ZK proofs instead. So at that point, you wouldn't have to rely on a group of DVNs all observing something happening on an RPC endpoint and attesting to it and allowing that message's delivery to a remote chain. Instead, anyone could construct a ZK proof of the sending chain, submit that ZK proof to the destination chain, and if that ZK proof validates, then we know that the sending chain is actually in the state where that message was sent, and therefore that message can be safely processed on the receiving chain. There's more complexity to that, of course, with finality. So just because you can ZK prove that there is a valid chain, chain X block that sends this layer 0 message, that doesn't mean that that block is currently or is always going to be considered canonical. And so you could have a reorg on that chain that removes the block from that sends that cross-chain message. And so there's some additional complexity with ZK proving. One of the things that we're working on with HBIT VM is, at least in the Bitcoin and Ethereum side and the Ethereum DA-derived L2 side, being able to prove data availability, and in Hemi's case, also Bitcoin finality with proof of proof, being able to prove all that as part of that ZK proof. And so you could use that for cross-chain settlement. Obviously, that does require waiting longer. There's generally in the space a trade-off between speed and security. If you accept a transaction on a blockchain with one confirmation, then that's just one block that needs to be reorged to undo that transaction and rip the funds out from you and conduct a double spend, right? And so just like way back in the day, people were worried about double spends against exchanges, and there would be 51% attacks against networks where somebody deposits a bunch of a token on an exchange and then does waits for it to get confirmed, swaps it to Bitcoin or ETH or whatever, withdraws it, and then does a reorg on the chain that they originally used for the deposit of some altcoin, basically yank the altcoin back into their wallet to be able to then go and send to somebody else or spend elsewhere or whatever. That same attack vector is now it's obviously still relevant for exchanges, but now it's more relevant for all of these cross-chain protocols, where you have the risk that a chain was at some point in a current state that meant that it should send this message from itself to a remote chain, but then there was a reorg, and that message was basically erased from that chain's history. So there's more complexities with finality, and again, some of the stuff working on with HBIT VM, at least for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then any Ethereum derived L2, you can basically fold finality into that ZK proof. So you can deliver a ZK proof that not only proves the chain's in a certain state, but that it's final within certain bounds, whether that be Ethereum DA publication finality or Bitcoin finality. And then you can use that for secure cross-chain messaging. And so the end goal of the ecosystem is to get off that sort of, DVN Oracle approach and get purely to ZK proofs. But in the current state, that's not something that all the networks in the blockchain ecosystem are compatible with. There's a lot of engineering work still to do to get that working for all of the cross-chain routes people want to use for DeFi. So in the interim, we're still using solutions like Layer 0, but the correct, safe way to do it is with that multi-DVN configuration, which is how everything in the Hemi ecosystem set up, and that would avoid that sort of exploit that happened to Kelp. As for VE Hemi, so VE Hemi is not, there's no cross-chain component to it. And so VE Hemi is just a contract on Hemi where you can take your Hemi tokens and you get a NFT representing your position back, and then you can do stuff with that position, like adding more tokens to it, extending lockup, whatnot. And then that position is used for reward calculations. It'll be used for governance vote calculations. It'll be used for, with the VE Hemi restaking system we've been talking about, for restaking those positions and using them as economic security to participate in various decentralized parts of the Hemi protocol, like MinerFi, HBitVM, covenant emulation, operation, decentralized sequencing, decentralized state root and DA publication of Ethereum. In the future with Chain Builder, decentralized shared sequencing and DA systems that support Chain Builder infrastructure. And so all of those flow through VE Hemi, but VE Hemi itself is not, it's not a cross-chain protocol. And so there's no, layer 0 type component that can be compromised in it. My guess is the question was, since VE Hemi, we've talked about VE Hemi as a restaking system, RSETH is a restaking system. That's probably where the question came from, but the architecture is quite different. So the way, I'm not super familiar with RSETH in particular, but the way Ethereum restaking systems work in general is you give your ETH to somebody who stakes it in a Ethereum node, and then the protocol mints you a liquid representative token that represents basically a claim on that locked Ethereum position. You can go trade that restaking token freely in DeFi, use it as collateral, do whatever you want with it. And then under the hood, when people eventually want to get back to native Ethereum, they can redeem it through the system. And then there's, depending on supply and demand, there could be a wait period for the underlying ETH that backs that restaking token to be unstaked by the validators who have staked it in the Ethereum proof of stake protocol to then return it to the people redeeming the liquid receipt token. And so VE Hemi is a much different architecture. So you're staking Hemi tokens, you're getting an NFT out of it, you're using that NFT to contribute economic security to different protocols, but it's you don't have that custodial side of it where, in the case of ETH restaking, that ETH is going basically to a service provider who's running ETH staking infrastructure, and they're managing a key that ultimately has access to that ETH. Instead of the VE Hemi, it's all done at the smart contract protocol level, and so there's no custodianship component to it. That's not why KelpDAO was compromised. So KelpDAO's compromise was purely related to cross-chain bridging and an exploit of cross-chain messaging using layer 0 that compromised DVN to mint or at least unlock a quantity of the liquid restaking token, the representative token itself, versus a compromise of the actual underlying ETH restaking system. But regardless, the point is that the architecture of VE Hemi doesn't have any of that custodial component. So for ETH restaking, you need that semi-custodial component because at some point somebody has to run a sequencer on the Ethereum network that has that ETH restaked in a key that they control. And there's ways to make that more secure. You could use versions of threshold signatures perhaps to make that sort of a restaking system more secure, but that's not what caused KelpDAO's compromise. It was just purely due to cross-chain messaging on the bridge side itself of the restaking token. And regardless, on the VE Hemi side, VE Hemi is not cross-chain, so there's no exposure to that sort of layer 0 compromise. Anything that we do in the Hemi ecosystem that uses layer 0, we use industry standard multi-deviant configurations, so that sort of exploit couldn't happen. And then on the base restaking side, since it is a fundamentally different architecture, you don't have that custodial need for the staked token at some point to be held and controlled by somebody who's running a validator node. Instead, your VE Hemi position is, when we launch something like decentralized sequencing, for example, what allows you to opt in and participate in the decentralized sequencing protocol in the first place. So it's kind of flipping it around. On the ETH side, you have ETH gets staked to validator nodes who control that ETH and run a sequencer that stakes that ETH in the Ethereum proof of stake protocol, produces blocks, returns that revenue or a portion of it to the restaking protocol, and then the restaking protocol mints a representative token that then can be freely traded, and then depending on the protocol, also allows you to restake that token into other systems and use it as providing economic security to other protocols. Flip it around, the VE Hemi protocol is all one layer, so it's just you restake or you stake your Hemi tokens into VE Hemi. You get an NFT position that represents it. That lets you participate in all of the decentralized parts of the protocol that need economic security for the system, including sequencing. And there's no need for somebody under the hood to run a restaking node that has control of the assets, if that makes sense. So kind of a long-winded answer, but architecturally different than ETH restaking, even though that wasn't the reason that Kelp was compromised. So it's more secure in that sense of there's no custodial component to the underlying Hemi tokens, the same way there is for the ETH and ETH restaking protocol, but also for anything cross-chain. AV Hemi is not currently cross-chain. We may do cross-chain stuff in the future, but regardless, anything that we do cross-chain using protocols like Layer 0 is configured with multiple DVNs. So the exact exploit that was done on Kelp cannot be replicated because you need to compromise multiple DVNs simultaneously.
Right.
That probably
There
could have
are.
been 50% shorter and still had all the same information in it. My apologies.
My God, don't even
That was
sweat. Are
only
you
20
kidding me?
minutes or so.
Yeah, that's nothing.
That's not a good standard to set, but okay.
Luckily, it wasn't a ZK proof question. We would have been here until the AMA tomorrow.
I did touch on ZK proofs, so
You
we got
did.
a little bit in.
Not bad. Not bad. All right, but we are over time, unfortunately. So there are a couple questions that were on deck that we are going to have to either cover tomorrow if they were late, or we can push them to next week. I do apologize that we didn't get to all of them, but we had some great questions this week and some great answers. So that's where we are at. What did we learn from this midweek with Max? Well, we learned all sorts of technical things. We learned about Hemi security. We learned there are 14 Air Bud movies, which is fucking shocking. And we have an AMA tomorrow, an engineering AMA covering the Rust move, if you will. So please join us for that. That will be at 9 a.m. EDT, which is 2 hours earlier than Midweek with Max, and it will be tomorrow, which is actually a midweek point. But we're not going to change the name of the show now. It's been going on too long, so we'll just all accept the fact that midweek happens on Tuesdays. With that said, it is time for outros, and therefore I will turn it over to Max, Jeremy, Marco, and Antonio for some outros this week.
All right, awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us for another Midweek with Max. As a quick recap, if you are interested in all of the MinerFi components, threshold signature schemes, or anything about our conversion from Go to Rust, definitely join us on that AMA tomorrow. We'll be discussing that in more detail. Also, if you're interested in building something on Hemi, as we already, I think, plugged twice, but I'll plug it one more time, definitely get the builder role, hang out in the builders channel, and if you're building something interesting that you want to chat through, we'd love to talk to you, just like we're doing with Alpha for the NFT marketplace. So if you have something cool you're working on, definitely reach out. And also, in the relatively near future, there's some cool stuff coming for public testing. So if you want to be one of the first people to test that and get some token incentives for testing it and giving feedback and bug reports, definitely make sure you are also in the beta testers channel because that's where that will drop first. And with that, we will, I guess, see everyone either on the AMA tomorrow or Midweek with Max next week. And just to clarify, next week's Midweek will still be on Discord, and then it's the week after next week that we are moving to YouTube, X, and LinkedIn.
Erectamundo. And we should just stop mentioning LinkedIn. I feel like we're encouraging bad behavior by telling people to view it there. While you
We
have
can
the
only take questions from LinkedIn. If we did that, it'd be like, how do you synergize the economic efficiencies of DeFi protocols in a permissionless manner through EVM coordination?
oh God, have you
The
tried
answer is
thinking
all of the
outside
ways,
the box?
all the time.
Yeah,
Don't
we
just think
circle
outside the
back
box.
though.
Imagine there is no box.
Right.
Okay, LinkedIn, you're drunk.
Yeah, it's Schrodinger's box. Oh boy. But yeah, join us tomorrow for our second in a series of monthly engineering AMAs. And please join us next week for Midweek with Max, which will be our finale on Discord, but certainly not the finale for the series, which will be continuing in perpetuity. But also, some very exciting announcements are coming next week. We should be able to preview some of the community things, and let's just say that things are going to get pretty exciting real soon, and you're going to want to be there for it. So definitely get the builder role, check out the creative roles here within Discord, and most importantly, be safe out there. So thank you, amigos. Thank you to our community moderators. Thank you to the Hemi team and the millions watching around the world, except those watching on LinkedIn. Ah, well, what the hell? Even those watching on LinkedIn. And yeah, that's all. I don't know why I suck so bad at intros and outros today. Did you guys notice that? It was like a complete struggle.
Nah, you're doing fine. You're doing great.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. I'm gonna keep
Well,
encouraging you no matter what. Don't worry.
I appreciate the hell out of that. But yeah, it was like I forgot how to start and end the show. I don't know. Maybe it's the weather. Maybe I'm tired. I have
Just
no
one of
idea.
those weeks. That's still
This
better
is
than
one
most
of
of the outros I do, so don't worry about it.
No, your outros are great. They're long, but they're great.
Sounds very long, but anyway.
Yeah. Without further ado,
Speaking
we're
of
gonna
long
leave it out.
outros,
So speaking of long outros, yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna go now. So thanks everyone, and bye.
all right, thanks everyone. Hopefully see you on the AMA tomorrow.
Thanks, y'all.
Cheers.
Take care, y'all. Be
Take
safe
care,
out there.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.